Hello and welcome to VR Reviews, and today we're going to be doing our top 10 list of 2020, which has just been such an amazing year, hasn't it? If you've seen these top 10 lists before, you'll know that I have some rules of how I do this to keep the list a bit more varied. I obviously only allow figures that have come out this year. I don't allow any repaints or reissues, and I limit it to one figure per line of figures. To be honest, I have not actually picked up that much stuff this year, so it was fairly difficult to make this list, but I have come up with 10 things, and these are the 10 things that I liked the most this year. Obviously, this is completely subjective, and these are just the things that I like. So let's go ahead and start looking at them. Number 10 is AEW Unrivaled Kenny Omega. First thing I will say is that my Omega is custom painted by a lovely boy, and therefore looks better than he normally would, but his position on the list is based on him in his normal state. In his custom painted state, I would probably put him higher, but as a base figure, he is my number 10. The AEW Unrivaled collection just started this year. He was my favorite figure from that series. I've wanted a Kenny Omega figure forever. And Jazzwares has done a really good job with this line so far. Their distribution is absolute garbage, but the figures themselves are pretty solid. They're much better than Mattel's wrestling figures. Not that that's a very high bar, but they're doing a good job. And if they can improve the distribution, I will gladly continue to buy them as long as they make people that I want. And Omega is a good start to that collection. Number 9 is the Mortal Kombat 11 McFarlane Toys Spawn. They have released this figure about 4 times already this year, but this is the original one, the one that came with the sword. Me and a lot of other people have been waiting on McFarlane Toys to finally make an articulated Spawn now that they've actually started making decently articulated stuff. Because the last time we got a decently articulated Spawn was fucking years ago. And that figure is very expensive and hard to come by. But this is a really solid Spawn figure. It is unfortunately a video game design, and I would have probably preferred a comic one, but at the moment that seems to be limited to Kickstarter stuff, because obviously a large toy company needs to use Kickstarter. But either way, it's still a very close design to his comic designs, and a very nicely done Spawn. His articulation's pretty well on point, certainly better than any Spawns we've gotten recently. And I'm very happy to add him to my collection of indie comic book stuff. Hopefully they'll make some more Spawn-related things in the future. Number 8 is the Mezco Hellboy from the 2019 movie. I'm not normally a huge fan of Mezco, but every now and again they'll make something that I want. And the thing that they made that I wanted this time is from a movie that I have not seen, which is apparently awful. But the actual design for Hellboy in that movie looks good, fairly similar to the Del Toro films versions of Hellboy. And the figure is relatively solid. All of his cloth goods look pretty good, which is hit and miss for Mezco sometimes. Good array of accessories, articulations mostly okay, 90-degree elbows are garbage, but other than that, he is a really solid figure. The only Mezco thing I bought in quite some time, but I'm not horribly dissatisfied with him or anything. He's certainly no match for the 1000 Toys Hellboy, but he is decent enough and deserves a low spot on the list. Number 7 is a figure that was technically released at the very end of last year, but I figure most people outside of Japan didn't actually get one until January of this year. And it's Mafex Newt Scamander, a figure that almost nobody wants, and that I managed to get for half price, but it is a very good figure of Newt Scamander if that is something that you want. I'm not the biggest fan of the Fantastic Beasts films, but I do really like Newt's character, and I'm also very happy to add more 1/12 scale things to my collection of Harry Potter stuff, so I very much was willing to get this. And he is really good. He's got a lot of accessories, he's got some animals and interchangeable parts and all the sorts of things that you would want, and it's also one of the only Mafex things that I've picked up since forever ago. And he's really good. I have no real complaints about him. I think it's about as good as you could really be expected to do with this sort of design, and he fits in with my SH figure arts and stuff, so I am more than happy to have him, and he deserves the sort of lower tier spot on the list. Definitely something worth picking up if you are a fan of those movies, so go out and get one of those if that's something you like. Number 6 is Figma Darkness, which somehow is the only Figma that I picked up that came out this year. But she is the Konosuba release that I was waiting the most for because she's my favorite one. Her figure is not the best of the series, that's still Aqua, but she is very good. Very solid representation of darkness. She's got good expressions and moves fairly well despite her big dress thing. She's a very solid Figma release. She's not amazing or anything, but she's pretty good. Definitely something worth picking up if you do like Konosuba. And I'm happy to finally have her to round out the collection of the Figma Konosuba crew. I don't know if they intend to make more people later on, but at the moment, this is all of them, and I'm glad to have her in addition to the rest of them. I'd say she's probably the second best of the line. Aqua, Darkness, Megaman and Cosmo are kind of both disappointing, so they can be at the end somewhere. I don't know which one's better, but she's definitely like the second best one. Number 5 is the Nendoroid Waddle Dee, which is very similar to the Kirby release, which I ranked fairly highly whatever year that came out. And it's just a really good Nendoroid. All the Nendoroid Kirby stuff is like the best Nendoroids that you can get. At least in my opinion, they fit the style really well on all the magnetic parts and everything. They're just really good. I would say they're exceptional figures if you're a really big fan of Kirby and Nintendo stuff. I'm not a huge Kirby person, so I don't have a lot of attachment to this. I would probably rank it higher if I was, but I can't deny that it's just a really good figure, and a good addition to all the other Kirby and Nendoroid stuff. You could even buy multiples of them, and army build them, and do whatever you want to. Number 4 is Bandai's Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine. I will admit right off the bat that I would not have bought this if I knew that the McFarlane one was going to be really good, but I kinda expected it to be awful, so I went out of my way to try to get one of these. I got it for a good price. The aftermarket price on this thing is insane. Do not pay that. Buy the McFarlane one. As a matter of fact, don't pay retail for this. Buy the McFarlane one, because this is only just better than the McFarlane one, but it is better in my opinion. They're very similar sizes, and this is not meant to be a comparison of the two, obviously. But this is a very expensive alternative to the McFarlane one if you want that. And he's really good, very posable for something in such a bulky, armory sort of design. He's really nicely painted. I'm not even a big Warhammer fan, but I do like Space Marines. I like some of the designs and some of the lore and stuff, and he is very, very solid. If you are willing to spend excessive amounts of money on Warhammer, which I know a lot of Warhammer fans are, he is worth getting. Otherwise, get the McFarlane one, which I probably would have ranked in a similar position on the list, because he is also very good. But either way, McFarlane one aside, this is a very, very pretty, very well-made Warhammer figure. Certainly worth checking out if you're willing to pay for him. On to the top 3, and number 3 is Storm Collectibles' Jushin Thunder Liger. I've been a big fan of Storm ever since they started making Mortal Kombat stuff, and while there's no Mortal Kombat stuff on the list, I do really like whenever they make wrestling things. Their Hulk Hogan was really good, and Liger is really, really solid as well. It's got pretty much the same sort of quality you would expect from Storm, and he's a really good depiction of a iconic Japanese wrestler. I wish that Storm was doing the other New Japan stuff, but Super 7 is unfortunately doing those. I guess we'll see what those turn out like next year. They will certainly be worse than the Storm figures. But if you do want a figure of Liger, this is basically perfect. It scales with all the other wrestling lines that are popular right now. There's really no problem with him whatsoever. There's even several paint variations of him that you can get. If you want a figure of Liger, buy this one. Buy several of them. Number 2 is the Polynesian Bikini Shamrock, which I think is the only thing on this list that I've managed to review this year so far. Sorry about that. But he is definitely my favorite Polynesian that's come out this year. Shamrock is already my favorite Polynesian, so a new version of Shamrock was obviously going to scale very well for me. Not much else to say, really. Standard sort of Polynesian quality if you're familiar with the line. Make more cute boys for me to buy. More boy robots, please. Thank you. And you can watch my review of that one, and no reviews for anything else, apparently. At least not right now. Moving on. And moving on to number 1, which is our Dragon Ball release for the year, which you may have expected, because it almost always has been. And it's Piccolo! The new 2.0 version of Piccolo. Piccolo is my favorite character, if you didn't know, so it makes sense for him to be my favorite release of the year. He's also just really good. Been waiting a long time for them to remake Piccolo. He was like the first figure that they made in the line, so he was desperately in need of an upgrade. And this figure is really, really solid. Even if I wasn't like the biggest fan of Piccolo, he would probably still be a contender for the best figure in the line that's come out this year. The shirtless version of Jiren is also really good. That's probably what I would have put in the top spot if not for Piccolo. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about Piccolo other than he could probably still do with being a bit taller. He's basically a perfect iteration of the character and is now probably not only my favorite figure of this year, but one of my favorite figures in the entire line. So yeah, definitely get Piccolo. I don't think I've ever met anyone that likes Dragon Ball Z that didn't like Piccolo, so everyone that collects this line should get this figure. That's really all there is to it. Go out and buy a Piccolo, and maybe the other things that I talked about. And that is pretty much it for the list. I hope you enjoyed some of the things as I have put them on the list. I obviously have enjoyed some of these things as well. I will maybe make a video again someday. We'll see. Until then, goodbye. Bye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my content, feel free to subscribe and click that little bell thing. I've been told that that does something or other. You can also give me money to buy toys at patreon.com/vrreviews, see pictures of toys at instagram.com/vrreviews, or see tweets about toys at VenomRaptor09 on Twitter. And I would greatly appreciate you doing any of those things.